Independence Day is now associated with alien invasion thanks to the Hollywood blockbuster by the same name. Recently, one of our very own viewers says he saw more than just fireworks on July 4th, and he sent us a video that has us asking, are UFOs somehow attracted to colorful aerial explosions like we are? Chatsworth, California, July 4th, 2018. John Lopez is celebrating with his family.
Every year we go out in our backyard because we're able to see the fireworks.
But instead of pyrotechnics, they see something far more startling. These lights.
Kind of look like fireballs just floating around in the sky, and then like different ones kind of appeared out of nowhere.
Look closer. The lights swoop, flicker on and off, and seem to hover for more than 30 minutes. And what makes it even stranger? This is the second 4th of July in a row that John has seen them.
Mom, the UFOs are back. I swear to God. I swear.
They're back. That's trip. Damn.
So everyone was kind of shocked to see that.
It left the Lopez family wondering, what had they seen and why does it recur on the 4th? Journalist and author Alexis Brooks is one of the leading authorities on UFO encounters.
We've heard many stories of UFOs showing up repeatedly to individuals, but the fact that it was at the same time and in the same place, I haven't heard too often. You wonder if the fireworks display may have actually attracted these anomalous objects to the scene.
Brooks wonders why the UFOs appear specifically on the 4th.
Are they attracted to the light in the sky that the fireworks portray? Do they want to hide themselves in the midst of fireworks?
Professor of anthropology Michael Masters notes there's a spike in UFO sightings on the 4th and brings up a theory that they could be trying to figure out exactly what we're doing.
It sort of conjures up ideas of this galactic zoo model, that we're being watched by these otherworldly beings fascinated by this strange ritual of independence where we explode these bombs in the air.
But Independence Day has been around for 200 years. Why are the UFOs only showing up to watch now? One theory is that we've only recently become interesting as a species, now that we're building space stations and supercomputers. Let's see what our experts think of John's video.
We did detect several consistent signatures across the video recordings, both made using similar make and model devices. So there is no evidence that we detected that these files were manipulated.
So the videos are legit, but could they be picking up your typical 4th of July light show?
I don't detect similarities with what I would expect to see from fireworks, because fireworks are a momentary lapse of light in the sky. They explode and then they vanish. There's just simply no evidence of that in these recordings.
Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio looks for other explanations, like planes or sky lanterns.
Aircraft have to have Federal Aviation Administration mandated lighting. We don't see that here, so I'm ruling out an aircraft. The sky lantern is slow and moves on the prevailing winds in the sky. These objects are not doing that. They're moving any which way they want. And so that rules out sky lanterns.
Our aviation expert, Tim McMillan, considers if the objects could be flares.
If there are flares fired from an aircraft, you would see them spread out. I would say flares would be pretty unlikely.
And finally, there's always the possibility of drones.
Could someone be operating a drone swarm? Maybe. Drones operate off of battery power, and so if you're operating a very high-powered, high-illumination light, that's less time that your drone is going to be able to stay in the air.
Our experts can only say these lights might be drones, but they can't be certain. So for now, our verdict, these are genuine UFOs. So maybe we are truly living in the land of the free, or we could just be part of a galactic zoo, entertaining the ETs. March 19th, 2020. We're in the skies over Monterrey, Mexico, on a cargo plane headed to Memphis, Tennessee. About an hour into the flight, while Captain Eric Delgado is enjoying his dinner, something catches his eye. He pulls out his device and records this.
Oh man, that is phenomenal, dude. I'm so glad you saw that. And you saw it drop out of the sky and just stop?
I thought it was a shooting star. Then it just stopped.
This is awesome, man. And it's pulsating too, man. That is nuts.
Captain Delgado says this thing dropped straight down from above and hit his plane with some kind of spotlight.
It looked like a lighthouse in some thin fog as it's turning. So that really got my heart going.
No doubt a UFO shining a light on your plane would be a terrifying moment.
Not that could have been a safety issue because initially this thing is turning into us and then it decided to park itself off our left wing tip.
The glowing orb maintains its position, pacing the plane. Delgado says it stayed there for 25 minutes before darting off at a sharp angle.
At that point, the fear was gone and then it was just, I was flabbergasted. It was just wonderment, I guess.
And there's more. This is the part of Mexico where Delgado saw the UFO. It's a short flight from central Mexico's zone of silence, a weird place that locals say blocks radio transmissions and where UFOs have been seen for centuries. And check out this video, similar objects recorded by the Mexican Air Force in 2004.
I guess now I can definitively say we are not alone. He's a pulsating orb. Look at that, dude. Look at that.
So what's the story down in Mexico? We passed Captain Delgado's video on to some top aviation and video analysts, and you need to hear what they have to say. We turn back to Mark D'Antonio, who has spent 15 years doing image and video analysis. He first wanted to check if this orb could actually be the planet Venus, which is sometimes mistaken for a UFO.
Number one, Venus doesn't move around in the sky like they saw it. And this object shone a light inside the cockpit of the aircraft. Planets don't have spotlights on them.
So could it have been a meteor or a piece of space junk? Fun fact, there are about 130 million pieces of junk in our orbit. But look at how this meteor leaves a long tail, and only for a few seconds. That's not what this thing does. Aviation expert Tim McMillan.
Meteors fly into the atmosphere, at a speed of 25,000 to more. You don't have something that's following you for 30 minutes. We can scratch that off the list. That's not going to be a good explanation.
McMillan is equally convinced this was not another plane.
If you'd had another plane that was flying in the vicinity, it would be operating the lights that are on either wing. So your green and red lights, anybody who's looked up in the sky has seen those blinking. And so you don't see anything else but that.
Now, at 576 miles an hour, we can also rule out drones, because there is no drone that I know of that goes 576 miles an hour at 37,000 feet.
And of course, other aircraft are supposed to show up on radar. But look at what happens when Delgado pans to the cockpit monitors.
There's weather about 40 miles off our left wingtip where this thing seems to have disappeared.
It may be the most inexplicable part of this whole incident. The orb never appears on Delgado's collision avoidance system or air traffic control's radar.
You would see, if there was another aircraft in the vicinity where they're looking, which is in this region, you'd see a plane on this. So we don't see that, so there's definitely not another aircraft.
You now have a case that's really, truly mysterious. This looks like there's mystery here.
That was a UFO. You can look at the footage and form your own opinions. I'm not the story. The footage is the story.
So America, time for the answer. Is it proof or not? Well, it's not a planet. There are no wings, and Delgado said it followed him. Now, we didn't see any evidence of the spotlight he described, but our verdict? A UFO, which is technically any unidentified flying object. July 13th, 2020, landscape gardener Ben Landrocombe is on a camping trip in Devon, England. There, in the sylvan silence, he comes upon a scene that looks anything but natural.
When we walked about 15 minutes into the forest, it felt really eerie, and the woods were really dense and just felt a bit of an eerie place. Then there was this big, like a crater, like a perfect circle.
Uprooted trees create an oval-shaped clearing. Take a good look. There's no evidence of professional logging or landscaping. We slow down the video, and you can see the damage seems to be about 60 feet across, with blown down trees right next to ones that are perfectly upright. Did something large land here?
Well, it's definitely a mystery, and who knows what it could be, but I've never had an answer back to me straight saying what it is. So I'll still believe it's a UFO landing site.
Journalist Aaron McCarthy says after it was posted, Ben's video made international headlines, with many comparing it to another English phenomenon associated with possible UFO landing sites.
To me, whenever I see something like this, I think of things like crop circles, because they are just really pushed down with some force. It doesn't look natural.
Southern England is the site of the famous Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980. Sightings of unexplained lights in the sky that became known as Britain's Roswell. So did Ben stumble upon the footprints of a British UFO, or something we can't even guess? We turn to our experts for a closer look. Our military analyst Tim McMillan considers the possibility that a secret or experimental aircraft might have crashed here.
If you're talking about any type of aircraft, falling out of the sky or crash lands, you're gonna have an impact crater and you're going to see debris. So you would see a lot more going on. Definitely some physical evidence that would support any type of crash of anything.
Now, some have suggested this could have been caused by a meteor. If such a strike created a crater here, it happened long enough ago for most of the displaced Earth to fill in. But these trees look like they were felled recently. They're still green.
That doesn't really suggest that there was enough time for all of that meteor impact to have filled in and covered over in that kind of time.
If it's not a meteor, what about meteorology?
It doesn't take a terribly strong tornado to knock a tree over. Another possibility is what's known as a microburst, and that is something where a really intense downdraft forms within the thunderstorm, and it comes crashing out of the storm and then spreads out really violently, almost like you think about like a bomb went off.
Tornadoes and microbursts are uncommon in England, but Hintz looked up the weather history of that area to see if either is a possibility.
So when I looked at the radar, there were a series of intense thunderstorms that were causing flooding and all sorts of damage throughout this part of England. My best guess is that, given the damage pattern, a concentrated gust of winds happened to tear through that particular part of the forest and knock those trees down.
So, our verdict? Based on Dr. Hintz's analysis, we're going to say this seemingly supernatural event can be explained by the weather. Most likely a hyper-local wind burst of 90 miles an hour or so. But Ben says that can't explain the eerie, otherworldly feeling he experienced in those woods. To him, the mystery remains unsolved. November 2020, the Red Rock Desert of southern Utah. A helicopter crew and state biologists are counting bighorn sheep when something catches their eye. They land and make this astounding discovery. A large, shiny silver object tucked into an almost inaccessible canyon.
It's just wild.
Look closer. From every angle, it's clear this thing does not belong here. Utah keeps its location secret, but news leaks out on social media, and it's quickly labeled the Utah Monolith. U.S. Army vet David Serber takes all the secrecy as a challenge.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find this place, right? It was probably 11 p.m., and I drove for 6 hours straight through the night to try to get there.
David works his way deep into a canyon.
I don't see anyone.
Just after daybreak, he rounds a corner.
There she is.
And it's just there. I was like, oh God. And it was just a really cool experience to have a few minutes alone with it.
There are a few things more iconic than a monolith, whether we're talking about the monolith that started 2001: A Space Odyssey or the obelisks of ancient Egypt. So when this mysterious metal monument popped up, it really sparked people's imagination. The idea being that possibly one of the ways that aliens would contact us would be to leave an information-laden monolith for us to investigate and discover.
One focus on the internet was whether the monolith was constructed with alien building materials.
The belief was that they are comprised of something called a metamaterial or a metametal.
Metamaterials are engineered to have properties not found naturally on Earth. Special composites of metal strands and ceramics are created to absorb radar for stealth technology. And there are reports from reputed UFO crash sites that the craft contain alloys that give them anti-gravity and cloaking characteristics. Accounts of alien metamaterials went mainstream in 2017 with a New York Times article.
According to the New York Times report, Bigelow Aerospace was contracted by the government to store possible materials from alien craft.
It's believed that the U.S. government is studying these alien materials to create the next generation of weapons. Could the Utah monolith be made of the same sort of alien materials? David tests it.
I had a magnet with me, mainly because we were trying to figure out, what type of metal is it? Not sticking. And also, was it a solid object or was it hollow? Not solid.
So what's it made of? And by whom? Other mysterious monoliths have been discovered recently, often in remote locations, in Romania, the Isle of Wight, and Sweden. Are these objects some sort of alien calling card, or could they be the product of a very creative and very human mind?
And when you first see this, you can't help but think of some type of extraterrestrial technology. However, there's nothing about what we're seeing in this video that leads me to believe it's manufactured from any kind of exotic materials.
Unlike reports of UFO metamaterials, the monolith doesn't defy gravity, and it's definitely not cloaked. In person, David noticed fingerprint smudges and ragged corners as well as other signs of terrestrial construction.
The telltale signs of those rivets would make me believe this is man-made, no matter how kind of anomalous its appearance is.
For McMillan, that's the giveaway, the signs of ordinary earthbound metalwork. If it is human-made, Kathy Strain has an idea why someone went through all the effort to put it in the middle of nowhere.
I think it's a message of beauty, of artwork, maybe makes you reflect more that I wanted to come here for the wilderness.
Some artists, like Donald Judd, believe that wilderness is the ultimate art gallery and use isolated locations for installation sites. But who made this and what it's made from is almost impossible to determine from a video.
Ultimately, you're not going to be able to determine exactly what this object is until you get it into a lab and under in-depth analysis.
But just as it appeared out of nowhere, the Utah monolith vanished, literally overnight. So until it's found and we can get it into a lab, our verdict, this is not an alien artifact. It's either a human artwork or a hoax. Either way, it's a compelling conversation piece.